Good day everyone, and welcome to the channel. It's Londononion here with a Back 4 Blood weapons review. And in this review, we're going to be looking at our third SMG, the MP5. Now, as part of today's discussion, we're going to be including my proposed weapon-centered deck build following the review. Now, although the stats and specs of the weapon speak for themselves, I will be giving my evaluation on the weapon's capabilities in combat. This will involve tactics that suit the weapon's strengths, and an overall score. Now, evaluation will take place on 4 main fronts: ammunition economy, crowd control, mutation deterrence, and pressure combat. Before we get started, it is important to note that a weapon's shortcomings can be supplemented with one's card selection, but evaluation will mainly be geared toward the weapon's base attributes. Additionally, one's character choice can make a weapon somewhat more forgiving, meanwhile, difficulty selection can accentuate or soften the downsides. So starting off with the MP5's ammunition economy, which is essentially how long a weapon can practically last throughout a given level, the MP5 is an automatic high fire rate weapon with a decent magazine capacity of 25 rounds. Now, with a high fire rate weapon, controlling the ammo output, such as attempting to perform single shots, requires more focus than most other automatic weapons. Additionally, among its SMG family, the recoil is considerably sharper, demanding greater readjustment to maintain dexterity. This is amplified with automatic fire. While speaking on that note, the crosshairs on the MP5 are tight enough to merit using hip fire, even up to mid-range. However, it is paramount that one has proper control of their fire to use the weapon in this manner. Because of how fast it fires, using a normal but brief pull of the trigger will consistently issue out 2 to 4 rounds with good accuracy. When using hip fire, the reliability is high. With automatic fire, this should be relegated to close or point-blank range. Now, the burst fire method is most beneficial for this weapon regardless of aiming or using hip fire, but it is the best way I have found to put each round to good use. Plus, each ridden will require around 2 to 3 rounds depending on range. Corruption cards, however, will add on to the required rounds. Moving on to crowd control, depending on one's corruption cards and main events in a given stage, crowd control will be more or less an important constituent in one's survival. Higher difficulties will likely create a greater need for effective crowd control. The MP5 has some efficacy in dealing with crowds. One's initial instinct may be to use automatic fire to thwart crowds, however, I have found this to be counterproductive. Because of how fast the fire rate is, and taking into account the magazine size, one is likely to waste more ammo per target, which ultimately would take away from its efficiency. Additionally, the pierce damage is only around 1.5 to 2 units of damage compared to the base damage, which is 11 units within the effective range. Unfortunately, for the MP5, crowd control is best performed at close range to take greatest advantage of its damage. While on the move, the MP5 shines brighter since it has maxed out mobility, allowing one to fire and move much faster than most other weapons. As long as one maintains controlled fire when dealing with crowds, the MP5 should see them through a crowd. And with a fast reload, applying consistent fire is not an issue. Moving on to pressure combat, as I coined the term, this refers to how efficiently a weapon can eliminate targets in multiple areas, or how well a weapon can complement one's ability to engage and eliminate multiple scattered targets at varying ranges. Now, the MP5 is mostly limited in its range. The weapon can be used for mid-range shooting, but this will demand more ammo and controlled fire. To optimize ammo use, pressure combat is best started at close range, though this will increase the risk of crowd control. As discussed earlier, using controlled bursts will help with this process. Because of the fire rate, pressure will easily overwhelm this weapon since every 5 to 6 targets will demand a reload at base magazine capacity, unless one is able to pull off consistent headshots. But even at a range, headshots will require more than 1 round. Although the reload speed is fast, it will come frequently, but this is an SMG with high mobility. So firing while on a backpedal, for example, is still within the weapon's strengths. But since the MP5 specializes in close range, eliminating scattered targets from varying ranges will stress the weapon significantly. As for mutation deterrence, the MP5 struggles. Its range for maximum effectiveness is 7 meters, which is within the danger zone. Trying to shoot from further away with tight accuracy, considering its sharper recoil than other SMGs, will prove to be difficult. Additionally, it is not the hardest hitting weapon either. Even its decent magazine capacity does not mean much since the fire rate is particularly high. A small error in dexterity will equate to more ammo lost. Naturally, due to the specs of this weapon, it is a textbook kiting weapon. It simply does not have the damage to be a fighting weapon, which is arguably the most advantageous designation. The mobility is the saving grace, but depending on the mutation, the MP5 will be able to handle itself. This is only noticeable with hawkers, stalkers, and stingers. Everything else is best kept at a healthy distance. This is a fast-paced stick-and-move weapon, which should not be surprising for an SMG. Moving on to the scoring, the MP5's ammo economy is in the median range. The magazine capacity is decent. The fire rate does require taming, but this is not a difficult task, and this follows with hipfire reliability. The recoil is sharper than its SMG siblings when using automatic fire, and each ridden will require 2 to 3 rounds depending on range. Corruption cards will alter the economy of this weapon, so I give it a 3 out of 5. Crowd control is not an area of strength or weakness. It has some ability to tackle crowds, especially at very close range. Most importantly, remaining mobile and effective with the MP5 is the strength. The penetration is unfortunately low, and reloading will be frequent, taking away from its efficiency. Also, the effective range will make proactive crowd control difficult. Ironically, using automatic fire is not in the MP5's best interest, unless at very close range or when ridden are in filed formation. So again, I give it a 3 out of 5. Pressure combat and mutation deterrence are areas of mediocre performance. With controlled fire, the MP5 has good ability to take on scattered ridden, but has less advantage in doing so compared with other weapons. As for mutations, the MP5 suffers the most difficulty. The low damage and potential for user error are significant enough to merit having to kite most mutations. So for mutation deterrence and pressure combat, I give it a 5 out of 10. And overall, this brings the weapon to an 11 out of 20. Now that concludes the review, but we will now transition into our deck build for this weapon. Now generally I would say there are 2 aspects of building a weapon/weapon class specific deck, and there is the more strength-based build and the compensatory/balancing build. A third option would naturally be a hybrid, which is probably the most reasonable, but every weapon is different and has its own strengths and areas of need to varying degrees. Now with this in mind, on a smaller scale I will categorize potential card selection into 4 designations: related, compensatory, synergistic, and preferential. Although Back 4 Blood already has designations for its cards, I prefer to use my own. And before we get started, it is important to note that there are 1,000 ways to build a deck. The most I can do is showcase how I prefer to optimize this weapon's performance. So starting off with the related cards. Related cards are the ones that directly impact/buff the attributes or effects of a given weapon/weapon class. The cards in this category are Mag Carrier and Speed Demon. Mag Carrier grants a 30% increase in pistol and SMG ammo capacity and grants a 10% increase in damage to both weapon classes as well. Speed Demon increases move speed by 4% and reload speed by 35% while using an SMG. Since we are using a low damage SMG, any increase to this only seems logical and not exactly a waste of a slot. Speed Demon helps with the frequent reload by increasing the speed, and moving faster only strengthens its kiting ability, arguably its greatest defense against mutations, so I choose to employ both cards. Now moving on to the compensatory cards. Compensatory cards are meant to counteract the weapon's main weaknesses, or balance out its areas of need. In the MP5's case, its main areas of need according to the stats are damage, mobility, effective range, and recoil control. In my opinion, since this is an SMG, its effective range is low on the priority list, but still worth mentioning. Compensating for damage and recoil control, however, can create a dangerous weapon. The cards I choose to aid with this are Shredder, Confident Killer, Line 'em Up, March for Death, Large Caliber Rounds, and Silver Bullets. Shredder increases one's damage by 1% for every connected round and stacks up to 15%, provided that each round connects within 3 seconds of each other. Confident Killer grants a 1% increase in damage for every mutation killed and stacks up to 15% for the duration of a given level. And Marked for Death increases damage by 10% to pinged enemies. Line 'em Up buffs effective bullet range by 10%, recoil control by 15%, bullet penetration by 25%, and aim speed by 25%. Now, 3 out of those 4 work in favor of what we wish to compensate for. Aim speed will simply be a bonus, so I still consider this a viable card. Large caliber rounds increases bullet damage by 7.5% and bullet penetration by 200%. Although this is not noted on the stats of the weapon, bullet penetration could use a serious buff, so this card hits 2 birds with 1 stone. Lastly, Silver Bullets increases damage by 10% and effective bullet range by 15%. When amalgamating damage numbers, these cards can theoretically inflict an additional 67.5% damage, including mag carrier. Penetration would increase by 225% and effective range would increase by 40%. Moving on to the synergistic cards, these are cards that have impacts to increase areas of strength or work to optimize the effects of other cards or one's choice of character. The cards I chose for this category are Hellfire, Motorcycle Jacket, and Padded Suit. As an alternative for Motorcycle Jacket, depending on character selection, I may also employ Fleet of Foot or Marathon Runner. Hellfire grants a 45% increase in move speed while firing and 5% while not firing. Motorcycle Jacket grants 5% damage resistance and 5 units of health. Padded Suit provides 10% damage resistance, 5 units of health, but comes with a stamina efficiency penalty of 20%. As for the alternatives, Fleet of Foot grants an 8% increase in move speed and nerfs damage resistance by 7%. This is, however, compensated by the Padded Suit. And Marathon Runner eliminates strafing and backpedaling movement penalties. The choices behind these cards will make more sense when discussing character selection. Our last area of card selection is the preferential cards. These are cards that are completely unrelated to the weapon and its strengths/weaknesses, but are still a useful perk, and this is where the most nuance can take place. Given that we have 4 slots left, I choose to give it to Grenade Pouch, Combat Knife, Battle Lust, and Face Your Fears. Grenade Pouch grants an extra offensive throwable. Combat Knife turns one's bash into a tack knife. Battle Lust grants 2 health units for every melee kill. And Face Your Fears grants 2 temporary health for every ridden eliminated within 2 meters. The MP5 specializes in close-range combat, hence I had stacked cards that amplifies its ability to thrive in a high-pressure circumstance. As for the Grenade Pouch, I usually find it more helpful, having more than 1 offensive throwable. To me, they are like a get-out-of-jail-free card under most circumstances. Now, our last area of discussion is the character choice. Given our card selections for this weapon, it primarily fits with Holly and Evangelo. Holly's character perks are geared towards stamina and endurance, hence I chose the Motorcycle Jacket and Padded Vest to compound with her damage resistance, giving her a grand total of 25% damage resistance. Despite the stamina efficiency penalty that comes with it, she gains stamina with each kill, so I'm not too worried about the negative effect. As for Evangelo, he is similar to Holly but has a greater specialization in move speed. Hence, I would give Evangelo the alternative synergistic card of either Marathon Runner or Fleet of Foot. Personally, I'd prefer Marathon Runner to increase speed and flexibility and make him an ultimate kiter, so to speak. Both characters are endurance buffs and seem to be more of the active members of a given team, especially in the face of chaos. But as I said guys, there's 1,000 ways to build a weapon-centered deck. These were just my preferences. Otherwise though, that concludes the build. Thank you guys for joining me on this one, and in our next video, we'll be reviewing the Super 90 Shotgun, and we'll also discuss my preferred deck build for said weapon. It's been Londononion, and I will see you guys next time.